Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel for another Elden Ring build video. This time with a look at the build that I'm running for my first New Game Plus playthrough, a pure fire damage Pyromancy Mage build, maxing out fire damage to make a build that excels at making every problem just blow up and disappear in a puff of smoke and ash. Fire magic, or Pyromancy as it was known in the Dark Souls games, has always been my favorite school of magic to use, mostly because it's so simple. It's pure offense with no complications, just huge damage dealing potential. In the older Souls games, I would always start my first playthrough with the Pyromancer build, but in Elden Ring, I decided to wait until New Game Plus and run through the game with my Fire Mage build at full potential with all the upgrades and items that increase damage and make my spells more effective. In this video, I'm going to cover my character build, show you where to get the talismans that you need to max out your damage, as well as the spells I'm running on this build and where you can get them. By the end, you should have all the knowledge you need to set up a powerful fire magic build for yourself, whether you're running it in New Game Plus like me, or setting out to get it started on a new character. First up, one of the most important pieces of equipment for a late game Pyromancy build in Elden Ring is the Giant Seal, which boosts the damage of fire incantations by 20% across the board, giving you a really helpful damage boost. This sacred seal is found pretty late in the game at the giant conquering hero's grave in the mountaintops of the giants. You can find it in the room right before the boss of this dungeon by jumping over the railing on the bridge, and it'll be in the room below near an enemy. For my weapon, I decided to try something different and run the Giant's Red Braid Whip, which can be found by trading the Fire Giant Remembrance at the Round Table Hold. This whip does some pretty solid fire damage and has a very cool weapon skill that flails the whip around your character, hitting all enemies several times and dealing some pretty solid fire damage. Whips also deal strike damage in Elden Ring, so surprisingly enough, most whips actually do really good damage even against enemies with lots of defense, and they also stagger enemies pretty effectively. Another very good option for a weapon here would be the Blasphemous Greatsword, which you can get by trading Rykard's Remembrance at the Round Table. This sword has huge damage on the weapon skill and scales with fire damage as well, so it's a pretty solid choice. For my character stats on this one, I'm making this build on a character that started at level 150 right before I went into New Game Plus, so if you're lower than 150, this is kind of the end target for your character stats by the time you finish the game. I have my Vigor stat set to 50 just for pure survivability against big hits from New Game Plus bosses. My mind is at 50 points because this is mainly a caster build, so I maxed this stat out as much as possible to be able to cast tons of spells before needing to refill FP. Endurance is at 20 points for enough stamina to cast repeatedly and wear some decent armor. I have my strength at 18 points and dexterity at 13 to wield my weapon. And finally, I have my faith stat pumped all the way up to 60 points for maximum damage on my incantations. I actually plan on leveling this character all the way up to 200, and I'm probably going to take faith up to 80 points and put the rest into endurance and mind for some armor and FP, or possibly dump points into dexterity and see how the extra casting speed feels. Next up, I want to cover the 4 talismans I'm running on this build, which are basically all focused on making my spells do more damage and cast faster, just completely funneling all my damage into the explosive fire spells. First up, I have the Fire Scorpion Charm, which increases all fire damage you deal by 12% while lowering your overall defenses. This talisman can be found in Fort Lade in Mount Gelmir. You just need to get to the top level and look around for a wooden ledge over the top of the battlements on the castle, and you can pick this thing right up. My second talisman is the Phlox Canvas Talisman, which boosts the damage of all incantations by around 8%, giving you another pretty solid boost to your spell damage. This talisman does take some work to get, as you need to completely finish Millicent's questline first. After you finish her quest, return to Gowry and Caelid and engage in a bit of ultra violence, and then after you kill him, Gowry will drop this talisman for you. There is a lower level version of this talisman as well, called the Faithful's Canvas Talisman, which can be found in the Celia Crystal Tunnel. My third talisman on this character is the Godfrey icon, which increases the damage of all charged spells and weapon skills. This is really helpful because most fire incantations can be charged up, and they do insane damage when combined with this talisman. The Godfrey icon can be found in the Altus Plateau at the Golden Lineage Everjail in the south part of this region. Just head here, defeat the wannabe Godric impersonator in the Everjail, and you can grab this talisman. Finally, my last talisman is the Radagon icon, which increases your spellcasting speed, allowing you to cast spells more rapidly. This one's pretty easy to find. You just need to head to the Debate Parlor site of Grace in the Raya Lucaria Academy, head out the door and make 2 quick right turns, and then if you follow this path, the talisman is in a chest at the top of the ladder. For the Physick Flask on this build, you definitely want to get the Flame Shrouding Cracked tier from the Erd Tree and Kalid, which boosts all of your fire damage for 3 minutes, just to even further maximize your fire damage output. The second tier in your flask is kind of up to your preference, so feel free to experiment or just use your favorite tier for the second slot in the flask. Finally, I want to quickly cover the spells that I'm mainly using on this build and how you can get your hands on them. I'll try and cover these spells in the rough order that you can get them during a playthrough, though I won't really go over the most basic fire spells that you can buy early on from Brother Corrin at the Round Table. There's not a huge amount of fire incantations, but they're all pretty useful, and the higher level spells really pump out the damage and have some pretty huge area of effect damage as well. First up, you can get the Firemonk's Prayer Book from a small camp in Liurnia in the southern part of this map. It's very easy to get, and this will unlock 2 spells for you. First is O Flame, which is a close range fire attack that deals good damage and high poise damage. The second spell in this book is Surge O Flame, which basically turns your hand into a flamethrower that shoots out fire as long as you have FP left. Next, if you head to the east on the same ridge from where you got the Firemonk's Prayer Book, you can find the Malefactor's Everjail. Enter this fight to fight Adon, Thief of Fire, and you'll be rewarded the Flame of the Fell God spell, which summons an orb of flame that will move toward the nearest enemies and then explode, dealing huge fire damage and knocking enemies over. This spell is pretty great to open up fights with, and can really help buy you time to cast some other spells while it tracks down enemies and knocks them down. Another useful spell for a Fire Mage build, or really any build obviously, is Flame Grant Me Strength, which gives your character an overall boost to physical and fire damage output while it's active. This spell's really simple to get. Just head to Fort Gale in Kalid and head around behind the castle on the ridgeline, where you'll find the spell behind some flamethrower enemies. After these spells, you'll have to progress up to the mountaintops of the giants to unlock the really next level fire giant incantations, which have some of the highest damage and area of effect in spells in the game. First, you can get the Fire Giant's Prayer Book from the Guardian's Garrison, just north of the first chain that you walk across and south of the White Ridge Road site of Grace. Get to the top of this garrison using the ladder in the courtyard and look for a ledge hidden by some barrels and crates. Follow this path till the end, and the prayer book is in a chest at the top of a ladder. This book unlocks 2 more spells, first being Giant's Flame Take Thee, which hurls a huge fireball that explodes on impact for big AoE damage. This spell can also be charged up and deals some pretty huge damage to anything caught in the blast zone. The other spell in this book is Flame Fall Upon Them, which fires out a scattering of several fireballs over a large area, potentially able to hit several enemies at once. This spell can also be charged up as well, so you can deal even more damage. Finally, the last spell that I use quite a lot on this build is Burn O Flame, which summons several giant pillars of fire out of the ground, which deal massive damage and can knock enemies up in the air and stun them. This spell can be charged up, and if you hit bosses with the charged version of this spell, the damage is massive since it hits several times. This spell can be acquired by trading the Fire Giant's Remembrance at the Round Table Hold, so if you want both this and the Fire Whip, you'll need to duplicate the Remembrance using a Mausoleum at some point. Well, that pretty much covers everything on this build. There's a lot of individual pieces to put together, but once you get it all, this build seems to really be able to dish out the damage, and the massive AoE on a lot of these spells means you can sometimes take out entire mobs of enemies with a single cast. Fire magic may not be the most versatile, but that's kind of the beauty of it. You just blow stuff up and rinse and repeat until there's nothing left to blow up. I've got a few clips of this build going up against some of the bosses in New Game Plus just to show it in action here at the end of the video, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this build as well. If there's something I'm missing, please let me know. I'm always looking to improve the builds and learn more about the game. In any case, I hope you found this helpful, and thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream and Discord server down below for anyone interested, and until next time, stay safe out there, Tarnished.